I'm joined today by Rafael Rivero. He is president of the Campaign to Raise the Minimum Wage and co-founder of Occupy Democrats. Rafael, it's great to talk to you. There's so much right now circulating in terms of the minimum wage and a lot of right-wing and particularly libertarian type arguments about lowering or eliminating the minimum wage altogether, and very specific arguments also about the effect of changes to the minimum wage on the economy more broadly. So I have some things specifically I want to ask you about, but at first I'll kind of open it up broadly to you. Right now, what do you see as the most irrational opposition to increasing the minimum wage?
Well, I think the argument that I hear all the time is that it will increase prices. I think this is a very seductive and dangerous argument, and it's one that we need to take down as supporters of raising the minimum wage. We need to address this and confront it head on. Ultimately, it's a canard. In fact, prices are raised to catch up with the inflation that's already occurred in the economy. It's not that the minimum wage is a contributor to consumer prices. And this is just a huge misconception that if we're ever to move forward on raising the minimum wage, we need to neutralize.
And it's an important one because if it were true, Rafael, that you see a corresponding increase in prices with any increase in the minimum wage, it would make the entire concept of a minimum wage increase completely moot. So maybe that's why it's become such a popular argument from the right, because if the right can get us to believe that any minimum wage increase would correspond or be followed by an equivalent price increase, then we shouldn't even be talking about it. It's a waste of our time. And as you said, it's a total canard.
Well, absolutely. It would be either hurting people that we're trying to help, or it would, leave us right back to where we started. We'd have a little bit more income, but our prices would have raised. Now, there's plenty of research on this topic, and it would be dishonest for the left to claim that no prices will rise as a result of this. However, research shows that some basic goods will rise slightly. Now, there's a very important qualification to that. The increase in the wage more than offsets the slight increase in some consumer staples. So, for example, if you raise the minimum wage by 30, 40, even 100%, which we've done in the past in this country, you may see some prices increase for certain basic staples, and I mean common goods. But we're talking about price increases that are pretty much negligible. 5 in some studies, 10% maximum.
Right, and you're talking about huge wage increases. I mean, a good example is what happened in San Francisco, which is from 2004 to 2011, when the observed period during which San Francisco was way ahead of the game in raising the minimum wage to $10.74. There were huge employment increases while the surrounding counties had more unemployment. And there was, even in food service, which is one of the areas where people say that's where really you'll see big price increases without any kind of employment gains. And at the same time, food prices only went up 2.8% in San Francisco. So will prices adjust slightly? Yes. Will they adjust slightly even without a minimum wage increase? Yes. But the question is more broadly, how many people are we bringing out of poverty? And that is actually a considerable consideration.
Oh, absolutely. And something that you said is very important. Prices will continue to rise anyway. The fact of the matter is that there are many other factors that are far more important when it comes to inflation. And for example, the price of oil, the price of, there's many inputs that go into a business. The cost of labor, many people would be surprised to learn, is only about 20% of a business, even for some of these low wage work employers like fast food, etc. Labor is only a small part of the inputs into their business. So even if labor had to be compensated at a higher rate, there are many things that a business owner can do to
kind of negate or counteract. Exactly. Yeah.
So you can pay, the CEO could get a slightly smaller bonus that year, or you could pay their best paid workers a little less. There's also less turnover, which will help keep costs down. So like you said, in the states and the cities and the localities that have raised the minimum wage, You have not seen effects on employment or effects on prices. The research shows that it's basically a wash. And so my point of view is, if it's basically a wash economically and morally you're improving the lives of so many people, in effect you're improving the lives of so many people, why not just go ahead and do it?
Well, so
And this
the
is the argument that the
detractors
right
will
makes.
argue that you're really not improving people's lives, that there is no correlation between an increase in the minimum wage and a decrease in poverty, even though when you look at the economist Dubé from the University of Massachusetts, who did kind of a longitudinal meta-analysis of economic studies on the minimum wage, in 48 out of 56 studies, there was a negative correlation, meaning as you increase the minimum wage, poverty does decrease. But I want to go to something you kind of alluded to, Rafael, which is, let's assume for a second that all of the right-wing arguments were true. And in our experience, none of them are true. But let's just hypothetically, let's assume they are all true.
Mm-hmm.
Morally, how can one of the most advanced countries in the world say that it is okay for someone to work full time and to make their annual salary less than that which is a mere living wage in the city or town where they work? Why would we want to do that as a country?
Oh,
I don't see the positive.
there is absolutely zero positive. And you could make the argument, I mean, like you said, if we accept everything that the right wing says, all their hysterical arguments about the minimum wage, which have never been borne out, that does not justify such a low minimum wage. So you say, okay, minimum wage for minimum work, minimum pay for minimum work, $7.25 is below minimum. It's historically below where the minimum wage has been at. There is simply no justification for it. And it doesn't help anyone unless you're part of the Walton family or you are the owner of Yum Foods. I mean, it's bad for the economy. It's depressing consumer growth. It's immoral. People aren't able to make ends meet. And in a consumer-based economy, it's not good economics. It's not good moral policy. It's not good politics. And it really makes you wonder, who who is the Republican Party representing when they block increases in the minimum wage, even though it's
Yeah, well,
been
they're
seven
representing
years?
those who are, they're representing the supply side, economic side, which says if you give money to the top echelons of society, it will trickle down voodoo economics. And
Right.
you're ignoring the demand side economic ideas, which say
Mhm.
if you stimulate those who are spending money, if you stimulate consumer incomes, then it is going to, I hate to use the term because it's kind of silly, but flow up to those who own the large corporations because their customers will have more money.
Sure, sure. It's very smart what you just said, because you can trace the artificially low minimum wage to the beginning of the Reagan era. In fact, President Reagan was the first president to not raise the minimum wage. In 8 years that he was in office, up until that point, the minimum wage was raised almost every year by Congress, ever since its inception in 1938. You can look this up. The minimum wage was increased almost every year. A cost of living adjustment was considered a natural part of the minimum wage. Reagan broke that trend. And in fact, and this is very sad to me, President Obama will be the next president. If he's not able to get a minimum wage raise in the next 3 years, he will be the second president after Reagan to not see a minimum wage raise during his tenure. Now, that's because Reagan didn't want it. Obama is actually requesting it from Congress, and it would be a real shame for this country if President Obama is not able to at least raise the minimum wage to back to where it was, before the Reagan era,
Yeah,
to the
just the
minimum wage that
1968 inflation
exactly.
adjusted level is not that crazy to think about, and people seem to forget that we're
No,
well below that level right now.
exactly. But
Raphael,
Republicans are
I
they're
know
unable to answer that question.
we have so much more to talk about, but unfortunately we are out of time. We'll definitely have you back. We've been speaking to Rafael Rivero. He's president of the campaign to raise the minimum wage and also the co-founder of Occupy Democrats. And as this conversation continues with this increase that President Obama is seeking, we'll definitely have you back. So thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me.